The first time my mother-in-law rearranged my kitchen, I thought she was just being helpful. By the third time she did it, I realized it wasn't help. It was control. She moved things without asking, criticized how I cooked, how I cleaned, how I folded laundry, how I spoke, how I dressed. Nothing I did was ever right. If I made tea, she would remake it. If I decorated the living room, she would quietly change it back the next morning. And my husband, he would just say, "That's how Mom is. Don't take it personally." But it was personal because she wasn't trying to improve the house. She was trying to erase me from it. She had a key. She walked in whenever she wanted. She would sit in my living room like I was the guest. She would talk over me when visitors came. If I said something, she corrected it. If I suggested something, she dismissed it. Slowly, I stopped speaking when she was around. I felt like a shadow in my own home. One evening, she crossed a line that changed everything. I came home from work and found my personal documents, passport, certificates, files, moved from my drawer into a folder on the dining table. "I reorganized your things," she said casually. My hands went cold. Those weren't kitchen spoons. Those were my private papers. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. He just shrugged. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I called my dad. I hadn't told him much before. I didn't want him to worry. But this time, I told him everything. Every small humiliation. Every silent insult. Every time I felt pushed out of my own life. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said calmly, "Don't react. Just watch." I didn't understand what he meant, but I trusted him. The next week, my mother-in-law announced proudly that she had spoken to a property agent. "You two should shift to a smaller place," she said. "This house is too big. Waste of money. I know a buyer who is interested." I stared at her, confused. This house wasn't hers. It wasn't my husband's either. It was in my name. A wedding gift from my father. Something she had never bothered to ask about. She assumed control because she thought I had none. She assumed authority because she thought I had no backing. She assumed I was alone. She had no idea that my dad had been watching quietly the entire time, and he was about to make a move she would never forget. 2 days after that conversation, my dad arrived without telling me. He didn't come angrily. He didn't storm in. He came the way he always did, calm, neatly dressed, observant. My mother-in-law welcomed him with a rehearsed smile. She assumed he was just another quiet relative who would nod politely and leave. She offered tea. He accepted. He sat in the living room and looked around slowly, taking in every detail. She began talking before he could ask anything. "You know how young people are." She laughed lightly. "They don't know how to manage homes. I have to guide her in everything. Otherwise, this house would fall apart." My dad didn't interrupt. He listened. She continued. "I was even telling them they should sell this place. Too expensive. They can move somewhere smaller. I already spoke to an agent." My dad put his teacup down very gently. Then he asked one simple question. "Sell which house?" She smiled. "This one, of course." He nodded slowly. "The one registered in my daughter's name?" The smile froze on her face. Silence filled the room. My husband looked confused. "What do you mean?" My dad turned to him. "This house was a gift to my daughter at the wedding. The deed, the registry, the tax records, everything is in her name. Not yours, not your mother's." I watched my mother-in-law's expression change in real time. The confidence drained first, then the color, then the authority she had been carrying for months vanished like smoke. She tried to recover. "Oh, I didn't know." She never said. My dad looked at her calmly. She didn't have to. He wasn't loud. He wasn't rude. But every word landed with weight. Then he continued. I also know she gave you a spare key. That ends today. He turned to me. Change the locks. My husband finally spoke. Dad, isn't this too much? Mom was just helping. My dad's eyes moved to him. Helping doesn't mean moving someone's documents without permission. Helping doesn't mean planning to sell a house you don't own. Helping doesn't mean making someone feel like a guest in their own home. My husband had no answer. Months passed, and the house felt different. Not because the walls changed, but because the air inside it did. I could finally breathe without feeling watched, judged, or corrected. My mother-in-law still visited, but now she knocked. She asked before touching anything. She spoke to me with a politeness that had never existed before. The control she once carried was replaced by careful distance. One evening, she sat across from me and said quietly, I didn't realize I was overstepping. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her of the past. The change in behavior was enough. My husband, too, had changed. He listened more. He noticed more. He stood beside me instead of staying silent. But the real shift was inside me. I no longer felt small in my own home. I no longer doubted myself. I understood something clearly. Respect doesn't come from fighting for it. It comes from knowing your worth and letting the truth speak for itself. My dad never raised his voice. He never insulted anyone. He simply showed up with calm certainty and facts. And that was more powerful than any argument. She had tried everything to control me. She had no idea my strength was never loud. It was backed by quiet confidence, clear boundaries, and a father who knew exactly when to step in. For the first time, he saw what I had been living with, not through my words, but through someone else's calm, undeniable clarity. My mother-in-law tried one last defense. I only wanted what's best for them. My dad nodded. Then the best thing you can do is respect boundaries. He stood up, walked toward me, and placed a small folder in my hands. Inside were copies of every legal document of the house, ownership papers, registry proof, property tax records. I think you should keep these somewhere safe, he said gently. That moment changed everything, not because of the papers, but because the illusion of control shattered completely. That evening, I called a locksmith. The locks were changed before sunset. The spare key my mother-in-law had carried for months was now useless metal. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She just sat quietly, realizing the ground under her authority had disappeared. The next day, she stopped coming unannounced. The day after, she called before visiting. The week after, she began speaking to me differently, carefully, cautiously, and my husband, he apologized. Not dramatically, not emotionally, but sincerely. I didn't see it before. He admitted, I thought you were overreacting. I'm sorry. I didn't need a long speech. That sentence was enough, because for months I had felt invisible. Now I felt seen. My dad didn't create a scene. He didn't insult anyone. He didn't threaten. He simply revealed the truth. And that truth was stronger than any argument. Control only works when the other person feels powerless. The moment that illusion broke, everything shifted. My mother-in-law never rearranged my kitchen again, never touched my things, never spoke over me when guests came. She had finally understood something important. I was never the weak one in this house. She just didn't know who was standing quietly behind me.